We've got ourselves a 1989 BMW E30 320i, which we've yanked the old broken engine out of, ready to swap in something newer, bigger, and more powerful. Today is an exciting day because we're going to be showing you what engine is going in our E30 and we're going to put it in.
We are down here at Brintech in Sydney. They are BMW engine conversion specialists and we are very excited to show you what is going in there. Something very special that's going to make this car capable of doing some absolutely epic skids.
This is Laurence from Brintech. You are the owner, as I understand it.
Yes, that's right. There you go, Marty.
Tell me a bit, man. This is not uncommon for you and not strange at all.
No, we often get them turn up in the shop looking like this.
Engineless.
Which is good for us. We don't have to remove the boring bit then.
What's your take on E30s and why do you have so many around?
Well, I think it's the whole 80s thing and the retro car. It's still an excellent handling car and has all the mod cons, and they're very adaptable with engine options and suspension packages and things, so I think people find them very modular.
Factory, you're under 100 kilowatts, even with the 2.5 litre 6s and stuff. Like, they're just making 100 kilowatts if you're lucky, is that right?
Yeah, so the M20B25, which is the biggest one of these other than the M car, is I think about 95 kilowatts at the wheels.
Okay.
So
which is not slouchy for how old it is, yeah. But there's better options these days, right?
Yeah, if we bring it up to modern times, but we just want to keep the look, then yeah, there's a whole heap of engines we can put in these things. There's BMW 6 cylinders, there's V8s, there's turbo packages. We can throw parts at you to do any of those options.
And send the kit off, like lots of mounts and wiring looms and stuff like that?
Yeah, so mounts, looms, cooling systems, drivetrain solutions. We even do suspension, brake and other packages to help get the car finished. So
I'm hoping that we can be the work experience kids / apprentices, yeah. And you can point at stuff and we can do as much of this as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be happy to give you guys some direction. I reckon you'll have it done in a day.
All right, man. Well, I'm pretty excited to see what's possible with this old BMW and what mad engines we can stick in there.
Yep, let's go check out a new engine.
The old broken BMW engine is out, and in its place, we're going to put something that makes a little bit more power, because we're going to go to the effort to make this car particularly awesome, stealthy, and fast with
an LS3. So this is a 6.2 litre V8 engine that should be capable of making around 300 to 350 kilowatts at that old BMW's wheels.
430 horsepower at the engine. These came out in Corvettes in America. We got them in Commodores in Australia. They're light for the amount of power they put out, and they're common and very, very popular.
The mighty LS engine needs no introduction and powers millions of vehicles. Big ones, fast ones, sporty ones, and has stood the test of time with its simplicity, versatility, and strength. One of its biggest drawcards is that these engines are everywhere, and so are parts, making it a simple swap that will push our E30 to a whole new level. And being an all-alloy engine will only pay a small weight penalty. This is one of the best wrecker engines you can get in Australia in terms of outright performance without destroying the purity with filthy forced induction. There is no replacement for displacement, and 6.2 litres with 8 cylinders means a healthy 430 horsepower at the flywheel, and that's before you even do any mods.
This engine is not a bolt-in swap into our little BMW. This is from a different manufacturer on the other side of the world, and it's massive. It's going to make big power, but there's a few things we have to do to it first.
So the first thing we need to do is just get rid of everything that we don't need for our conversion. So wiring's going to go, these exhaust manifolds are going to go, and that's going to be replaced with other performance-y epic stuff that we have sitting over there. But for now, we just strip everything we don't need and then get it ready to go into the car.
Just like the LS engines, Laurence and his guys are no strangers to engine swaps. They've developed a kit that will speed up this process massively. Mounts, cooling, clutch, steering, shifter and exhaust manifolds. While the car's engine bay is pretty accommodating, it's still a bit of a puzzle to make it all fit neatly. Much of these parts are made in-house specifically for our engine and car combination. While we're at it, some clever mods will improve our shift and steering feel, as well as reinforce some of the supporting structures in the car that hold the engine, which we can now strip off ready to be installed.
exhaust manifolds are gone, all the ancillaries are gone, and this wiring loom can also go because we will be replacing that with an aftermarket one.
So our next job is replacing the sump. This is a low profile design that is side baffled and baffled up and down as well. It's increased capacity because of the wing design here, and because of the design of it, will clear all of the BMW steering bits. So the next job is to flip that over, make sure there's no oil in it first, and then replace the sump with this.
Sump clearance is one of the main challenges of any engine swap. The two manufacturers didn't fax each other back in the late 1980s and check that all the future engines would fit, or that their sumps would be compatible with each other's crossmember. The LS being such a popular engine with huge aftermarket support means we don't have to fabricate our own sump and pickup. We can buy one off the shelf, saving heaps of time. We simply remove the factory sump and gasket, splash tray and pickup, and prep the bottom of the block for a new sump. We're also going to be installing an aftermarket dipstick, which will move it into a more accessible location. The new pickup is designed to work specifically with the matching sump. And then, yep, I was the guy that snapped the first bolt. Luckily, we could remove it without too much trouble, and turns out we actually needed a different length bolt. Now we can get ready to attach the engine to the gearbox.
Channeling our V8 power down to the wheels, we are going to use this manual gearbox, which is a Tremec TR6060. It's a slightly newer version of the T56, which we've used in Mod Max and other cars. A bit nicer to drive, smoother shift, just some improvements there. It's been in Dodge Vipers, HSV Commodores, Ford Falcons, Corvettes, all sorts of cars, anything with a stick shift. And a V8, you're very likely to find a gearbox like this.
We've gone from the stock dual mass flywheel to a single mass, as our car is about half a tonne lighter than the car this setup typically comes out of. The LS flywheel bolts need to be sealed as they're exposed to oil on the back of them. We've got ourselves an all-new clutch kit which we can install using a clutch alignment tool. This is an important place to make use of a torque wrench, as the bolts are pretty hard to access and you'd rather they didn't let go at full power.
This is the slave cylinder from inside the gearbox. Unlike a lot of cars where you see the slave cylinder sitting on the outside of the gearbox pushing on a rod, this actually sits there and all the clutch and stuff is up against it. We've gone from a dual mass flywheel to a single, so it's all a lot smaller, which means we have to space it out using this tricky spacer, which gets everything into the right spot. Come have a look. I'm a bullet. She's heavy.
Let's just put the front on there for a second.
And we'll get each side of it.
Just move it forward. I'm going to take that.
Nothing to grab, hey? It's so spiky. All right, bolt will pull it in now.
Our gearbox is now attached to the LS, so the next part of the puzzle and what makes time travel possible is these engine mounts. That's your side. So this here will adapt our LS to fit in the E30. Once that's on, like that, this here will fit inside our car. The next step is to install the headers. Now these ones here are custom made here by Brintech. These are a 4 into 2 into 1.
When you're trying to stick big engines in little cars, one of the biggest problems you often come across is that your headers don't fit. These will fit on our big fat engine and fit inside our little engine bay.
Apparently it's a thing in LS land to use sealant on header gaskets, possibly just to ensure the internet never runs out of things to argue about. But whichever way you do it, these are a breeze to install with the engine outside of the car.
I stitched him up because I put the engine mount on backwards so his exhaust manifold don't fit. Sorry, mate.
The engine and gearbox have brand new mounts, manifolds and sump. So next we can get the car into the air, ready to load everything in. The front cross member needs to come out so we can load the engine onto it and then stick it back in the car.
The old E30 may not want to give up the rest of its old parts without a fight, but it's nothing a few rattle guns and a couple of hammers can't sort out.
In the ultimate embarrassment, after I gave Laurence the hammer to try, he hit this side once and that side popped out. We weren't even hammering it. Just old BMW thing. So far, very happy with my E30 experience. It's all easy to get to. It kind of looks like you'd expect from a car of this era, but nothing's been too rusty or munted.
There's this liquid coming out of weird places. That's the weird thing so far, like kind of undoing these bolts and going, did you WD them? No. There's just,
water.
The car's just ejecting liquid from very strange places.
So the plan is to drop this front subframe off, so we've undone everything, all the links and mounts and stuff like that. And this whole rack is going to come off, and we're going to modify that rack ready for our new engine. So a fairly vital piece of safety equipment on a car is the bolt that holds your steering wheel to the rest of the car so that it actually goes where you point it. It's just finger tight, look at that. We did not undo it. And now it's undone and you are not connected to the road anymore.
So this here is the factory steering linkage. This connects your steering wheel to the rack. That is getting removed and replaced with this one here. Now this here has a rubber donut in it, which is kind of gives you some damping, but that removes some of the feel. So this one here will replace that. Engineerable with this in here, and it just means you'll get a more direct feel for better performances. Plus, this is slimline, which works better when you're doing engine conversions because there's bigger stuff in there. So that's coming out, that is going in.
So juicy.
So juicy.
That wasn't so bad.
Less wetness on that side.
All right, she should be free. Yeah.
While we have the cross member out, we're going to reinforce it with some metal plates. Even on stock cars, this is a known weak point that is really easy to fix with it out of the car. It's just a matter of grinding back the paint, placing in the inserts and then tack welding them, with a few hits of a hammer to follow the shape of the original part. Josh, who is Brintech's lead fabricator, is throwing me in the deep end to give me the full kit assembly experience, which means it's time to fire up the TIG welder and start melting things together. I'm removing the surface rust and flaky old paint with a wire brush, applying some rust converter, and then I'll paint it all black. Meanwhile, a bunch of other rusty parts can come out of the engine bay. Brake master and booster, air conditioning lines, sound deadener, and the rusty clips that hold it all in.
There's a factory ECU. We will never ever be needing that again. Bye. Hang on, there's a big bit that needs to come through now.
Yep.
The biggest part. Hang on, go back towards me.
Yep, I'll push it into you, then you push it back into me.
Caught on something. Yeah, hold on.
Can't really hit it anymore.
Yeah.
We're stripping everything but the base essentials from this engine bay. Anything we can update or improve while it's apart is a good thing. What's not a good thing though is that Marty appears to have purchased a car with weight reduction mods.
Rust-free E30. Glad I paid extra for one of those. Great.
Without pulling apart the interior or all the sound deadening, there was no way I was ever going to know that rust was there. But like most rust, it can be repaired, it's just annoying that it's there at all.
So our car will now forever be known as the Rust E30.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I see what you did there. This is actually our first main hurdle. We were saying before that this car has kind of been a bit of a German BRZ, and by that it's kind of just been Lego. It's been easy, heaps of components that come in and out easily.
No stubborn bolts.
No. As long as you hit things with a hammer, they fall off. But taking off all of this engine covering that I gather is in there for, to make the car nice and quiet. Once that was cut off and exposed, then this rust here exposed itself like a dirty old rusty robot.
Even though the car's been painted, very commonly the bay hasn't, and so there's no reason to take this off. So chances are, well, there's two things it may be. One is that no one knew about it, or more sneakily, someone did know about it and just covered it back up and went, she'll be right, and sold it. I don't know. It's a hard thing to check because the engine's in the way. You'd actually have to pull all this off while you were checking it to know if there was any rust there. So a tricky thing to identify, but I generally go on what the rest of the condition of the car was, and because it's so good, you assume that that's either been fixed before or hasn't happened in the first place. But these do have a reputation of being rusty.
Yeah, but our options are pretty simple, which is either leave it or fix it. There is a guy that works near here that does restorations of like old Mustangs and Corvettes and stuff like that. So he's going to come and have a look at it, and we'll just get it sorted because, with a car like this, that much effort and time has gone into it, we may as well just get it fixed. But for now, we are going to continue with fitting up the engine, make sure that works, make sure all the mounts work, because it's really easy to take it out again. So we'll keep going with that, and then once our mate who restores old rusty cars, this will be nothing, by the way, from what he's used to, like if he's doing like old rusty stuff.
Stuff they pulled out of a
so
dam
we'll get
or
him to come and have a look at it, get that repaired.
Kick on. Let's do engines.
For now, we'll kick on, get the LS in the bay.
LS in the bay, it's where many builds on Instagram finish, and while it is an achievement to get it mounted, making it all actually work is still a long way off. Our crossmember is painted and ready to use, so the steering rack can be bolted on and then the engine attached to the crossmember using the new mounts. The last thing we're going to do with the engine out of the car is change the spark plugs. Some brand new NGK Iridium spark plugs are going in, and we can plug in our coil leads back into the ignition coils. Crossmember is fully loaded. We've got our shackle bushings and our engine mounts and our gearbox mount all ready to go. And now the engine actually gets loaded in from underneath. So yes, a hoist makes this heaps easier. But basically we put it down on this table, which has enough room either side that you can get the bolts from underneath. Lower the car down slowly, get it in position, buzz those up, buzz the gearbox crossmember mount up, and we're done.
We're about to have an LS3 E30, people.
Removing a tired old low power engine and inserting a modern big power engine is exciting no matter what logos are on the side of all of it. The engine should make 2.5 times what the old one did at a minimum, and as a huge bonus, the bonnet will still shut. With the front crossmember reattached to the car, we can then bolt up the gearbox mount. These cars had so many different engine and gearbox combinations from the factory, they've made this process easy with a sliding mounting system that gives us plenty of adjustment. Now that the engine is in, we can focus on all the little bits and pieces that make this whole thing work. With the help of some prefabricated Brintech parts, we can pick our way through the list of everything that needs to be reconnected back together. The radiator that the guys have developed is an E46 unit with a custom bypass plate which will keep our big engine cool, as well as make the radiator hose routing simple and easy. It is also possible to adapt the air conditioning, meaning you can stay nice and cool while doing huge skids. Our original top radiator bracket still fits, and a custom-made alloy header tank with hoses is bolted to a spare spot on the strut tower.
So we've relocated the oil filter down here. It's a nice, neat little part of the kit here, and that just means oil changes are going to be way easier later on. And Martin, you just got a couple of lines to go on.
Yeah, so it uses this.
Then that is done.
Uses this sandwich plate up onto the factory location, and these lines bring it out of there and to the front. It's a really good spot, isn't it?
That's amazing.
So I'll just bolt this on and we're good.
The front of the car and the engine bay is looking epic, but we want to be able to get that power down to the ground without blowing things up, so a little bit of JDM goodness is going in the back of this German icon.
All right, big problem with an E30. Whenever you put power on these things, the rear ends just give in. So we've solved that with the R200 setup. And
This is from a Skyline.
yep, Skyline.
Awesome.
We can use S15 as well,
Yep.
S14.
Yep.
So they're common off the shelf, $300-400 diffs. They can handle what, 500-600 horsepower.
Yeah.
Good ratio options, 3.69, 411.
Yep.
This is the 411 for you guys, so you can do skids in 6th gear. Yeah, and we adapt all the factory sensors, and we add some brace work here, which solves the tearing the floor out problem.
So the front here is factory.
Yep.
And then you guys got some extra stuff here, is that correct?
That's right. So all this is factory. So your arms, your bushes, all your positions and geometry remain the same.
Yep.
For your springs. All we do is just bolt the diff in here onto some custom brackets.
Yep.
And we add this bar to the back.
And this bar just basically goes in on some brackets that we just welded in there. So obviously you can position it on the front, lift it up, check that this is in the right spot, weld it in.
That's it. Very simple.
Of course, there are BMW options that can also do this job, but the R200 is a tried and tested diff that fits into our E30 without too much fuss, and in our part of the world, it's readily available to buy.
Yeah, now it's good if you just keep
So the engine is in, and now the rear end is in as well, which is very exciting. Next up is the exhaust. So this here was made down here, and this is a twin 3-inch kit. So there's a couple of high flow cats here, there's some resonators here, and then the 3 inches go down into one 3-inch here, which will collect up and go into the muffler there. Are we ready, Martin? Are we almost ready for exhaust?
Yeah, man, just bolt up a few more things in the back and then whack it in.
Amazing. So there it is. It's going to sound amazing. And we've got a couple of little tricky things that we're going to be doing down here that you are going to see a little bit later on.
Our LS3 V8 is in the car and our driveline is now more or less complete.
A massive thank you to Brintech, who made this kit and also let us use their hoist and all of their expertise over the last couple of days. What's next, Martin?
We've got a whole bunch of stuff to do inside the car. Now, to make this start and run, it needs some fuel and it needs some spark. So we're going to wire it up, and that's pretty much all that's left to do to actually make it start and run.
Martin,
It's going to be good.
let's go get a mad feed and
So
then
keen to
dive back
drive it.
into it.
So keen to
tomorrow.
drive it. Go get
Thanks,
some.
Brintech, you legends. Thanks, Laurence. There he is. Thanks, mate.
What other German food can we get?
A Kransky.
Yeah,
no, that's
Kransky.
Polish, isn't it?
Sure.
I think a Kransky's Polish.